AITA for telling my sister not to announce her pregnancy at my wedding because I was going to announce mine, but she did it. My husband and I had been trying for a baby for some time. When we found out about the pregnancy, I was overwhelmed with joy, and my husband was just as ecstatic. It felt like everything in our lives was aligning perfectly. Our wedding was just a few months away, and now we had this incredible little secret between us. We decided we wanted to share the news at our reception, not in a flashy or attention-seeking way, but as a small, intimate moment with our friends and family. The only people who knew in advance were my parents and my maid of honor, who helped me plan when and how we would share it. Then, a few weeks before the wedding, my sister pulled me aside and told me she was pregnant. I was genuinely happy for her. She had been married for about a year, and I knew she and her husband wanted kids, so this was great news. I hugged her, congratulated her, and we had a sweet moment together. But then, almost too casually, she mentioned that she was planning to announce her pregnancy at my wedding. I remember feeling a sharp pang of unease. I did not want to be selfish, but something about that just felt off. So, as kindly as I could, I asked her to hold off. I explained that I was also pregnant and had been planning to announce it at the wedding reception. I told her that it was important to me because it was not just about sharing the news, it was a culmination of an emotional journey for my husband and me. I asked if she could wait just a little longer so that, for one day, the focus could remain on the wedding itself. She seemed a little annoyed but did not push back much, so I thought she understood. Fast forward to the wedding day. Everything was beautiful. I was beyond happy. The ceremony went perfectly, the reception was full of love and laughter, and I was finally starting to relax and enjoy the night. As the speeches wrapped up, I felt this little flutter of excitement, knowing that soon my husband and I would share our special news with everyone. It was going to be a brief moment, just a few words of gratitude and joy, but it meant the world to us. And then my sister stood up. She clinked her glass, and before I even fully processed what was happening, she announced her pregnancy to the entire room. The guests erupted in cheers. People gasped, clapped, ran over to her with hugs and congratulations. My heart dropped. I just stood there, frozen, watching as my wedding reception transformed into her personal baby celebration. I saw my husband's face fall, saw my maid of honor glance at me with wide, shocked eyes, saw my mother shift uncomfortably in her seat. I cannot even describe what I felt in that moment. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. I was hurt. I was angry. And I felt small. This was supposed to be our moment, but suddenly, I felt like I was in the background of my own wedding. I did not say anything right away. What could I say? Any attempt to redirect the attention back to us would have looked petty, like I was trying to compete with her. So I swallowed it. I smiled through it. And when the moment to announce my pregnancy came, I let it go. It just felt wrong. I knew if I said something then, it would not be the joyous surprise we had envisioned, it would just seem like an afterthought, a way to steal the spotlight back from my sister. Later in the night, when I finally pulled her aside and asked her why she had done it, she acted like I was making a big deal out of nothing. She said she just could not keep it in anymore, that she had been so excited she had to share it. I told her that I felt blindsided, that I had specifically asked her to wait, and she shrugged it off. She said I was being selfish, that I was trying to control when people get to share their happiness. I was floored. Selfish? Was it selfish to want to have one night that was about my husband and me? Was it selfish to ask for just a little consideration after I had already compromised so much? Our parents were not much help. They agreed that she had been out of line but told me to let it go for the sake of family peace. My mom said it was just a bad judgment call on my sister's part, not something worth holding a grudge over. My dad made some comment about how there's plenty of joy to go around, and said I should be happy for her instead of focusing on the negative. But I cannot seem to move on. Every time I think about my wedding, I do not think about the love and joy of that day. I think about how my sister took something from me. I think about how I sat there, biting my tongue, while she soaked in the attention that I had been looking forward to. I think about how she dismissed my feelings like they did not matter. She, on the other hand, acts like nothing happened. She is still going about her life as if she did nothing wrong, still treating me like I am being dramatic for feeling the way I do. She has even joked a few times about how her baby will be born first, as if this is some kind of race. I know that, logically, I cannot change what happened. The moment is gone. But the resentment lingers, and I do not know how to let it go. Part of me wonders if I am truly being unreasonable, like she and my parents suggest. Maybe I should just be happy for her and move on. But another part of me cannot shake the feeling that what she did was deeply unfair, and I do not owe her instant forgiveness just because we are family. So, am I the one in the wrong for not being able to let this go? Update 1. Several weeks had passed since the wedding, and no matter how much I tried to push it aside, the resentment toward my sister refused to fade. It was always there, lurking just beneath the surface like an ember that refused to die out. I could go about my day as if everything was fine, smiling at work, running errands, even laughing with my husband over dinner. But the moment I had a second to myself, the bitterness would creep back in, winding its way through my chest like a slow, unwelcome burn. It was in the quiet moments, when I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling, when I was folding baby clothes I had secretly started collecting, when I was scrolling through my phone and came across wedding photos, that it hit the hardest. I would stare at those pictures, my smile frozen in time, the love and joy so evident in my eyes. But I knew the truth. I knew that just minutes after some of those photos had been taken, everything had shifted. That what should have been my happiest day had been overshadowed by someone who couldn't stand to let me have even a few hours in the spotlight. My stomach would tighten, a familiar knot of anger twisting deep inside me. I had spent months planning my wedding, pouring my heart into every detail, dreaming of the moment I would finally get to share my joy with the people I loved. And then, with a single selfish act, my sister had taken that away from me. She, on the other hand, seemed to exist in a completely different reality, one where she had done nothing wrong. While I was still carrying the weight of that betrayal, she was living her life as if nothing had happened, as if the wedding had been just another party, as if she had not turned my once-in-a-lifetime moment into a celebration of herself. There were no apologies, no acknowledgement of how she had hurt me. Just the same casual messages, the same meaningless small talk, the same expectation that I would simply move on like she had. It was infuriating. And then one evening, just as I had settled into the couch with my husband, my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, not in the mood to deal with whatever mundane update she had decided to send me, but something about seeing her name flash across my screen made my irritation flare up all over again. With a sigh, I picked up my phone and opened the message. I want to gather everyone at our house for a family dinner. Come, it will be cozy. I read the words over twice, a strange, uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. There was something overly sweet about the way she had worded it, something that set off alarm bells in my head. It was too friendly, too inviting, too carefully constructed. I could practically hear the syrupy tone she would have used if she had said it in person, the kind of voice that dripped with artificial warmth. This wasn't just a casual family dinner. This was something else. An attempt at, what? Was she trying to smooth things over without actually addressing the issue? Did she think that by simply inviting me over for a meal, everything would magically be fine? That I would sit there, smile politely, and pretend like I wasn't still carrying the resentment of what she had done? I stared at my phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. My husband, who had been flipping through the TV channels, glanced over at me. He must have noticed the way my shoulders had tensed because he raised an eyebrow. What's wrong? I let out a short laugh, though there was no humor in it, and read the message out loud to him, my voice dripping with suspicion. He didn't even hesitate before shaking his head, letting out a low chuckle. You do realize that she just wants to be the center of attention again, right? Of course, he was right. It was obvious. My sister didn't do things without an agenda, and this dinner was no exception. There was no doubt in my mind that she had planned this gathering as another opportunity to bask in the glow of her pregnancy, to soak up the attention and admiration of the family. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became, this wasn't just about a casual meal. This was about her, about making sure everyone was still fawning over her, about ensuring that she remained the focal point of every family interaction. The realization made my blood boil. She had already taken my wedding reception and twisted it into her personal announcement party. She had already turned my joy into her spotlight. And now, she wanted to orchestrate another event where she could do the same thing all over again. The gall of it was almost impressive. For a moment, I considered declining. It would be easy enough to say we were busy, to avoid the whole ordeal entirely. But as I sat there, a different idea began to form. A slow, simmering sense of justice took root in my mind, curling around the bitterness that had been growing for weeks. If my sister had no problem using my special day to her advantage, then perhaps it was only fair that I returned the favor. I was not the kind of person who sought revenge just for the sake of it, but the thought of turning the tables, just a little, was too tempting to ignore. I turned to my husband, a knowing smirk forming on my lips. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if he already had a sense of where my mind was going. She wanted a family dinner. Fine. We would go. But this time, I would not be the one sitting quietly in the background while she took center stage. I replied, "Of course we'll come. Thanks for the invitation." Update 2. The dinner was exactly as expected, unfolding in the usual style of our family gatherings. My mother, as always, was stationed in the kitchen, bustling around with dishes even though she insisted she didn't need any help. She was the kind of person who thrived in controlled chaos, shooing anyone away who tried to assist while simultaneously complaining about how much there was to do. The sounds of clattering plates and the occasional exasperated sigh floated in from the kitchen, providing the familiar background noise of our family meals. My father was in rare form, armed with his usual arsenal of old jokes, the ones we had all heard 1,000 times, the ones that had lost their humor long ago but still made him laugh like they were brand new. He would lean back in his chair, chuckling before he even reached the punchline, looking around the table expectantly, waiting for the laughter that only ever came out of politeness. It was part of the routine, part of the script we had all learned to follow since childhood. And then there was my sister. Sitting at the center of the table like royalty, glowing with satisfaction, reveling in the attention that naturally gravitated toward her. She was leaning back comfortably in her chair, one hand resting on her stomach in that performative way that pregnant women do when they want to make sure no one forgets their condition. She beamed as she spoke, voice animated, soaking in every bit of admiration sent her way. She had positioned herself as the undeniable star of the evening, knowing exactly how to turn every conversation back to herself. Her husband, as always, was mostly silent, playing the role of the indifferent bystander. He was a man who had long since mastered the art of appearing engaged while contributing as little as possible. He nodded when necessary, offered the occasional chuckle at my father's jokes, and otherwise sat with the expression of someone mentally elsewhere. Whether he truly didn't care about my sister's constant need for attention or had just accepted it as an unchangeable part of his life, I couldn't say. But I had seen this dynamic play out time and time again, my sister at the center, basking in her moment, and her husband merely existing beside her. I waited. I didn't rush. The night carried on, filled with the usual rhythm of conversation, with plates being passed and stories being repeated. And, as expected, my sister found ways to turn every topic back to her pregnancy. It was effortless for her. Someone would mention a work update or a funny story from their week, and she would seamlessly redirect it back to the baby. She spoke about how she was already planning the nursery, how she had started thinking about names, how she couldn't wait to experience the joys of motherhood. The room indulged her, nodding along, cooing at her excitement. She thrived in it, glowing under the weight of everyone's focus. And then, the moment came. A natural lull settled over the table, the conversation dying down just enough for my sister to fill the space once again. She was mid-sentence, talking about how much she was looking forward to becoming a mother, about how she imagined her perfect journey into parenthood, when I picked up my glass. I tapped my spoon lightly against the rim. The sound was soft but commanding, enough to instantly pull the attention of everyone in the room. Heads turned. Conversations halted. Even my father, who had been in the middle of reaching for another roll, paused mid-motion. My sister's voice trailed off, her moment of glory suddenly interrupted. I smiled. Not a smug smile, not an overtly pointed one, but a calm, pleasant expression that exuded warmth. I looked around the table, letting the anticipation build just a little before finally speaking. "Oh, sorry to interrupt," I said lightly, making sure to keep my tone casual, as if this were nothing more than a passing thought. I just thought this would be the perfect moment to share the news. Jason and I are also expecting a baby. Silence. And then, as if someone had set off a firework in the middle of the room, the reaction exploded. My mother let out a sharp gasp, her hands flying to her mouth before she let out a shriek of joy. My father immediately clapped his hands together, his booming voice filling the room as he repeated, "Well, would you look at that? Another grandbaby." My aunt, always one for dramatics, actually clapped her hands together like a delighted child, her face beaming. My husband grinned, wrapping his arm around me, pulling me in as if to reinforce the moment. And just like that, the focus shifted. The energy in the room pivoted effortlessly, the attention snapping away from my sister and landing squarely on me. The questions started pouring in, overlapping in their excitement. "When are you due? How have you been feeling? Have you thought about names yet? Are you excited? Are you nervous?" It was the exact scene that had played out at my wedding reception, but this time, I was the one in the center of it. This time, I was the one being celebrated, the one basking in the outpouring of love and excitement. I allowed myself a brief glance toward my sister. Her face had gone rigid, her previously radiant expression now frozen in something that almost resembled disbelief. Her lips pressed together, her fingers tightening around her fork. She swallowed once, a barely noticeable movement, her eyes darting around the table as if trying to find a way to regain her stolen spotlight. And then, she tried. She forced a laugh, the kind that was just a little too high-pitched, just a little too strained. "Well, but I'm going to give birth first, it's so exciting. I'm already choosing names." It was a desperate attempt, a frantic bid to redirect the focus back to herself. But it didn't work. No one paid attention. No one even acknowledged the words that had left her mouth. The room was too busy, too caught up in the wave of excitement surrounding me. My mother was still gushing, my father was already talking about what kind of grandfather he planned to be, my aunt was asking about baby showers. My husband was squeezing my hand, his eyes filled with pride. The moment was mine. And my sister? She was sitting there, expression unreadable, her shoulders just slightly hunched, her eyes clouded with something she would never admit out loud. Everyone was busy with me. Update 3. After dinner, as the guests began to gather their coats and say their goodbyes, I lingered in the kitchen, rinsing off the last of the plates and letting the satisfaction of the evening settle in. The house still buzzed with the remnants of conversation, laughter spilling in from the living room as my father cracked yet another joke, my mother fussed over leftovers, and my aunt discussed baby names with my husband. The energy in the room was light, warm, filled with the glow of a family still riding the high of unexpected but wonderful news. And yet, even in that warmth, I could feel something else brewing. A sharp, crackling tension. A weight pressing against the edges of the evening, waiting for the right moment to burst. I didn't have to turn around to know she was there. I could sense her before she even stepped into the kitchen, could feel the heat radiating from her fury. And then, just as I expected, she was there, standing beside me, eyes burning, hands clenched so tightly into fists that her knuckles turned white. Her breath was measured but ragged, controlled but seething, like she was doing everything in her power to keep from screaming. "Are you serious?" she hissed through gritted teeth, voice low enough that no one else could hear but sharp enough to cut through the air between us. "You really announced your pregnancy at my dinner? It was my celebration, and you decided to steal my moment?" Her anger was like a force of nature, pressing against me, demanding a reaction. And yet, I only felt calm. A slow, settling satisfaction coiled inside me, the quiet kind of victory that tasted far sweeter than I had anticipated. I turned to her, letting my expression shift into something carefully composed, just the right amount of innocence, just the right touch of feigned surprise. "Oh, I'm sorry," I said, my voice light, almost airy. "I just couldn't help myself. I was so excited and wanted to share the joy with my family. Isn't it great that we're going through this together?" Her face darkened instantly, her skin flushing a deep, angry red. Her eyes narrowed, her lips twisting into a sneer. The frustration, the disbelief, the sheer outrage, it was all there, plain as day. "It's not the same, and you know it," she snapped, her voice shaking with barely contained rage. "You did it on purpose to overshadow me." I tilted my head slightly, considering her words as if they were some grand revelation, as if I hadn't already known that, hadn't planned it from the very start. Then, slowly, deliberately, I smiled. A small, knowing smile. "Oh," I said, keeping my tone light, almost amused. "So you're saying it feels terrible when someone steals your moment?" The shift was immediate. A flicker of realization crossed her face, the moment where my words sank in, where the weight of what I had just said hit her squarely in the chest. She wanted to argue, wanted to throw something back at me, but there was nothing to say. She knew. She knew exactly what had happened. She knew exactly why I had done it. Her lips pressed together into a tight, thin line, her jaw clenching so hard I could almost hear her teeth grinding. Her fingers curled into even tighter fists at her sides, her entire body vibrating with unspent rage. And yet, she said nothing. For the first time since my wedding, I wasn't the one standing there, swallowing back my emotions while someone else basked in the spotlight. For the first time, I wasn't the one being told to just let it go, while someone else took what was meant to be mine. No, this time, it was her. This time, she was the one standing there, seething, while the celebration happened without her. This was my moment of triumph. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It wasn't about some petty game or childish competition. It was about balance. About fairness. About making sure she understood exactly what it felt like to have something stolen from you, to have a moment that was meant to be yours suddenly ripped away without a second thought. Somewhere deep inside, I felt something shift. The resentment that had been burning inside me for weeks, the bitterness that had twisted itself around my memories of my wedding, it loosened. It faded. It no longer felt like a wound that refused to heal, like a weight I had to carry. Because now, she knew. Now, she had felt it too. And while I knew it wouldn't change her, wouldn't make her suddenly understand all the ways she had hurt me in the past, it was enough. For the first time since that night, I didn't feel wronged. I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like I had been pushed aside for someone else's spotlight. Because now, the roles were reversed. And I knew now, she felt exactly the same way I had.